So building resiliency through connection to God and community. Our presenter, Dr. Normelena Rios, grew up in the Bay Area. She studied and trained in Southern California. She attended Scripps College and earned her medical degree at the University of Southern California, working mainly out of the Los Angeles County Hospital. And she returned home to finish her training as an OBGYN with Kaiser Permanente at the Santa Clara Homestead campus. She is a full-time OBGYN physician and physician lead for the Family Violence Prevention Program at Kaiser. In this role, she was responsible for helping to identify members experiencing violence and developing protocols to ensure they receive support and resources, as well as increasing awareness among Kaiser staff of the different types of family violence and trauma and their impact. Normelena is an active researcher on the connections between adverse childhood experience, resiliency, and their impact on pregnant women and their pregnancy outcomes. We are grateful to have her as part of our community, working and living here in the Tri-Valley with her husband and 2 children, 8 and 4 years old. And last year, she was a catechist for our 2nd graders, and this year, she'll be catechizing the 3rd grade evening class. Let us welcome her tonight. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Crystal, for such a warm welcome, everybody. So I'm going to be focusing tonight on building resiliency through connections to God and community. First, some disclosures. So all the thoughts and words and ideas in this presentation are my own. And even though I work for Kaiser Permanente, I'm not here as their representative. I'm here kind of representing my own thoughts. This presentation should also not substitute the care that you would receive from your own physician or mental health provider. It's really meant to kind of provide resources and a space for discussion, but just make sure you follow up if you do feel like you would need more support. If at any time someone feels uncomfortable with any of the topics, please feel free to step away. I will not be offended. I know that sometimes conversations in these topics can get heavy, and if somebody needs a moment away, feel free to just step up and walk away. And then I have no financial disclosures. So my goal for tonight is to show how we can build resiliency through our connection to God and to our church community. I will review how stress and trauma can affect our bodies, but more importantly, how resilience can provide an important counterbalance to those effects. I want to spend some time sharing how we can build that resiliency in ourselves, but also in our children. And I will share information that is founded in research as well as in my own faith experience and how that has helped build my family's own resiliency, especially throughout the last few years. Our lives are surrounded by so many stressors and traumas. In one person's lifetime, they may be exposed to multiple events, starting as a child, and then more and more can be piled upon us as adults. Recently, in our communities, we experience many of the traumas shown on this slide. And some days it can feel that these traumas occur again and again and are never ending. They can include things that are recent, like COVID and quarantining, or natural disasters such as wildfires, or more personal traumas such as the loss of a loved one or our own poor health. And some of these traumas may not be in our backyard, such as war or school shootings. But these events can lead to stressors in our own lives, either through vicarious trauma or through the effects of a loved one. The word trauma comes from the Latin word for wound. And these traumatic experiences can wound our body, mind, and our spirit. These traumas can be cumulative. And as we are exposed to different traumas in our lives, the effects can accumulate in our bodies and have a graded response on major health outcomes. Meaning that the more traumas that we are exposed to as children and adults, the greater the risk of disease. And it can develop in our lives through the things listed on this slide, from chronic health conditions such as heart disease to insomnia and other concerns. So today I want to address why. And there are 2 whys that I want to really focus on. First of all, why does this happen? I think that kind of delving into that understanding will help us then answer the second why, and why is it important that we talk about resiliency today? So first of all, I think many of us may have heard about a healthy stress response. So imagine you're walking through the woods, and you come upon a bear. And you have a choice to make. You're either going to sit there and fight the bear, turn around and run, or in some instances, maybe even freeze. So I want to know, who in this room are my fighters? Who's going to stay there and fight the bear? Right. Oh, I think we got one in the back. Okay. So in this moment, we've all experienced something, maybe not a bear in the woods, but something that has our adrenaline running. And so our brain starts to release these hormones, that adrenaline, that cortisol, and our bodies start to get pumped, right? Most of us, we're going to be running. So our blood pressure's going, our heart rate's going, we release blood sugar for energy, and it activates our immune response so that we can either fight or flee, depending on what we choose to do in that situation. And too much adrenaline and too much cortisol is not a good thing. So then our bodies will turn everything off once the threat is gone. And to a much lesser degree, this normal response happens when we face minor stressors. So as adults, this might be a deadline at work, presenting in front of a crowd, planning your next vacation. In childhood, it could be breaking a toy, scraping a knee, simple things that we are faced with. The problem is, imagine if you are running into that bear over and over and over again. You think you've gotten away, and there it is again. And now, this becomes toxic stress, a stress that is intense, prolonged, and severe. That normal stress response now stays with us, and it's constantly activated. And it turns into a pathway that can result in these health consequences. It affects the structures in our brain, increases inflammation, suppresses our immunity. And it causes us to sometimes cope with high-risk health behaviors such as smoking, substance abuse, overeating. And now that normal response that was going to allow us to run away from that bear turns into disease. The high blood pressure is now heart disease. That sugar we talked about to help us, give us energy, becomes diabetes. Suppressed immunity results in infections. And those increased inflammatory markers can result in other types of disease. And unfortunately, the end result can be these physiological changes and altered biochemical and responses that seem to mimic PTSD. And what about the impact on our children? How does this toxic stress, this overactivation of the flight, fright, freeze response manifest in them? Of course, at young ages, they're not going to be manifesting in disease, but they experience this toxic stress in other ways. Excessive fears and worries, difficulty separating from family, disengaging, fear of going to school, difficulty relaxing, sleep problems, possible increased utilization of healthcare because they start to feel those bodily experiences to the stress they are experiencing. And in some more severe cases, even thoughts of suicide or suicidal gestures. And as they get older, we start to see some of those high-risk behaviors that we have as coping mechanisms as adults. And they may start to have problems at school, have difficulty making friendships, maybe become the victim of violence, or they themselves be bullies, engage in high-risk behaviors, resulting in things like teenage pregnancy, and then, of course, leading to anxiety and depression and the problems that can come with that. So now I've kind of answered the first why. But before we move on, I want to take a moment to pause and ground ourselves. This information that I just discussed thus far could be producing stress in us right now. It can be activating our own fight, flight, and freeze response. It can be causing us to reflect on our own lives and our past. So I want to invite everybody here, and including those that are at home, to take a moment to pause and to ground ourselves. So I'm going to walk you through an exercise of grounding before I move on. So I want everybody to make sure that you are sitting comfortably in your chair. and I want you to close your eyes. And I'm going to keep mine open to make sure yours are closed. So close your eyes and focus on your breath. Breathe in slowly for the count of 3. Then out slowly again. Bring your mind's focus to your body. How does your body feel sitting in that chair right now? Scooch all the way back to the seat so the whole length of your back is pressing into that chair. Can you feel the contact between your body and the chair's surface? Is the material smooth or textured? Press your arms down. Notice how they feel against your pants. Now push your feet into the ground. And imagine the energy draining down from your mind, through your body, and out through your feet into this earth that God has given us. When I do this, I picture it as the light of God filling my body as it goes from the top to my toes. But you can imagine it any way that you like. As the energy drains from your head, feel how each body part becomes. Your torso feels heavy, and now your arms as you relax those muscles. Last, feel the heaviness go down your legs, through your feet, and down into the ground as we allow God to take all that energy away. Okay, I'm going to bring you guys back. So hopefully that helped ground us and put us in a different space after the things I mentioned. So now, on to the good news. Biology is not our destiny. The brain can be rewired. And although the most critical time of brain development is from ages to 5, this ability to rewire our brain continues into adulthood. So we maintain the ability to learn new responses and behaviors due to this plasticity of our neural networks. And this is where resiliency comes in and why it is so important. This is how we do the rewiring I just mentioned, through resiliency. So resiliency is the ability to adapt and recover quickly from difficulties. Research has shown over and over again that those adults and children that develop resiliency have this ability to bounce back, to respond positively to adversity, and to adapt. They are less likely to have those poor health outcomes. It protects them against toxic stress effects on our bodies, protects us against disease, depression, and anxiety. So, how do we build this for ourselves and for our children? But before I jump to that, I'm going to have everybody actually go on their cell phones. I'm sure you're not asked too often to go onto your cell phone in the middle of a presentation, but this will be, I think, something hopefully fun. So before I jump into all that, I want us to kind of think, what do you think about resiliency when I bring that word up? So you are going to get your text messages if you'd like to participate, and if those of you are watching us from home, do the same. This will work no matter where you are. So you're going to text the 2 is the 22333. That's who you're texting to. So 22333. And in your message, you have to include those numbers listed first here, 23992, followed by whatever word you want to put in. And you can put in as many as you want, just you have to put the number and the word. Okay? So in the 2 field, it's 22333. And you're going to text to that number, start with 23992, and whatever word you want to put in. Here we go. And we're just going to take a moment and see how many different words we can get up here. Oh, it doesn't have to relate to anything. This is meant to be fun, right? So unicorn is fine. All right, we'll take a few more moments, but feel free, if you think of something later, to go ahead and put it up here. And I'll keep this active, so if you think of something later, go ahead and text it, and then we'll... The 2 number is actually here now. It's 22333, and you're going to text. You have to start your message with 23992. All right. So we'll come back to this at the end in case any more people put other words in there. And like I said, continue to put in afterwards. Okay? All right. So how do we build resiliency? Many of the words that were shared up there fall into a lot of these building blocks that I have listed here. And all of these are really important. We need basic things such as food, hydration, and exercise, good sleep, rest to build resiliency, as well as agency, self-initiative, that sense of purpose, the ability to pursue purpose and belief that a change is possible. However, today, I want to spend a bit more time focusing on these 3 building blocks and how faith and belonging to a faith community can help build these blocks for resilience. So let's start with self-regulation, self-awareness, and mindfulness. This encompasses documentation and tracking and rewards for meeting goals. But importantly, in the context of today's discussion, is this discussion around mindfulness. So what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is a mental state made possible by focusing on one's awareness of the present moment, while calmly accepting one's feelings, bodily sensations, and thoughts. Learning mindfulness skills to acknowledge one's emotional state and balanced way to respond when emotions get strong. So how is mindfulness supported? Well, it's supported by practices such as yoga, and of course meditation, which is that technique that really allows our mind to rest and attain a state of consciousness that is different from our normal state, where the mind can become clear and relaxed, similar to what we did a little bit earlier today. Helps us focus internally instead of on what's going on around us. But prayer. We all know prayer is that spiritual communication with a higher power. It can include thanksgiving, adoration, sometimes confession. Prayer is a way of acknowledging that there is something more significant than ourselves, and to allow that presence to relieve the pressures of the day, and allows us to give thanks during that prayer as a practice of gratitude. And gratitude not only nourishes our resilience, but will also make us happier. There are many ways to pray. One of the ways that we practice prayer in our household and gratitude is through family prayer time at dinner. We all go around the table and we thank God for the blessings of the day. My children have been participating in this since they were little. Now, if you were doing a gratitude journal to create this as a practice, usually I recommend doing three gratitudes a day. But I don't put limits on my kiddos, so sometimes this can take a while. And I also, don't stop them when they include things like thanking God for creating Target. And finally, music. Music is a way that can really enhance mindfulness, can bring that focus into our internal selves and can even be a way of prayer. Just think about when we're at Mass and we're really engaged in a song and singing with our fellow community. So a 30-minute practice of mindfulness or prayer or meditation, whatever you choose, has so many other benefits, as well as building resiliency. It can help us sleep better, calm our emotions, increase our ability to focus, help us with our memory, create a greater self-awareness, enhance the ability to safely experience feelings in other situations, and reduce stress levels. When I speak to this with my patients, I say you need to have a meditative practice because when life gets tough, it's easier to fall into something that you already know what to do versus trying to meditate when you're already feeling overwhelmed and that bear is standing right in front of you. So what if we don't have 30 minutes yet, right? And we can't carve that out right now, but we want to get started. How do we incorporate this into our lives? So I want to invite everyone to find mindfulness moments around you. So how do we practice this in real life? First, be present in the moment. Stop and smell the roses, literally. Stop and enjoy the sunset. Then focus on your breathing as you're in that moment. Slow it down like we did earlier today to slow, deep breaths. And then, as a bonus, give thanks to God for that moment. It can be a short prayer or just a simple thank you. I practice this with my children as well. If I see something beautiful, or if I need a mindfulness moment, I will take pause. I will slow down my breathing and share my gratitude for that gift that God has given me in that moment. Whether it's a beautiful sunset that God has painted for us, or a sunny, breezy afternoon that I get to enjoy with my children, or a beautiful hummingbird drinking nectar from a flower. And I draw my children into this moment, and we all enjoy it and give thanks to God for letting us be there. So I have mentioned breathing a few times. So we all think we know how to breathe. I mean, we're all breathing in the room. I know that. If not, we would be turning blue. But I did want to take a moment to focus on this because some of that slow breathing can be difficult, especially with children. And so some of the things that I have found to slow down breathing in children, especially little ones, my favorite is blowing out candles. Has anybody done this with children before? Yeah. Oh, so fun. So I go up to my son, especially the really active one. Okay, we're going to blow out candles now. Ready? Nope, too fast. And you just blow the candles, and you make them slow it down. And they have to take a deep breath to blow out the candles. And they love it, so that once they're all blown out, oh, mommy, let's do it again. And it helps them slow down their breathing in a way that's fun. I also love imagining colors. My daughter, who's an artist, we love doing this one. Imagine your breath being one color as you breathe in and a different color as you breathe out. And of course, as a little artist that she is, that color changes every time she breathes in and every time she breathes out. But it helps her to focus on her breathing and imagine it coursing through her body. Other breaths that you can find online and find videos for are for the belly breaths, the balloon breaths. So imagine that your belly's a balloon, and you're going to take a deep breath in to fill it up. And of course, what kid doesn't know what a balloon is? And the balloon goes up, and the balloon comes down. Or maybe they like to surf and swim. So imagine your belly's an ocean, and the wave comes in, and the wave goes out. How about for us? So those may work really well for us, some simpler ones, but there's also a really good breath technique called 4-7-8 breathing. It's a more formalized breathing technique, also known as the relaxing breath. It was pioneered by Dr. Andrew Weil, who's the founder and director of the University of Arizona Center for Integrative Medicine. And the thought is that this particular specific breathing pattern will further help reduce anxiety, in addition to some of the breaths that I just went over. It can help manage sleep, control cravings, control anger. So I thought we would take a couple minutes to practice this breath with Dr. Weil.
The famous 4-7-8 breath, the relaxing breath that I teach to all patients and doctors and students and friends, another yoga breathing technique. In this, you try to keep your tongue in the yogic position, touching the tip of the tongue to the ridge of tissue just behind your upper front teeth, like that, and try to keep it there the whole time. You breathe in quietly through your nose to a count of 4, and you hold your breath for a count of 7, and then blow air out forcefully through your mouth. Helps if you purse your lips out and you make a whoosh sound when you do that. So the exercise begins by letting all the air out through your mouth. Then you close your mouth, breathe in silently to a count of 4, hold your breath for a count of 7, out through your mouth audibly to a count of 8, and you will repeat this for 4 breath cycles. Looks like this. That's it. You must do this at least twice a day. You can do it more frequently if you want, but never more than 4 breath cycles at one time, at least for the first month. After a month, if you're comfortable with it, you can increase to 8 breath cycles, and that's the absolute maximum. It's desirable to slow the whole exercise down as you practice it. What limits you is how long you can comfortably hold your breath, but as you practice that, you'll get better and better at it.
And then there are, of course, some more formalized things that we can do that may take a little bit more time. So guided meditation is another way to really practice that. And of course, there's an app for that, I like to say. And I'm sure many people have heard of them. But I wanted to take a moment to actually plug our own meditation here that we have at St. Charles. So we do have a Christian meditation. So sometimes having someone guide us a little bit more hands-on through the experience can be quite beneficial. I was blessed to actually have one of my teachers in high school, I went to Notre Dame in San Jose, do guided meditation with us when I was in high school. So it's a practice that I was blessed to actually have at a pretty young age. And a lot of times I find that guiding yourself through a mindfulness moment can be really beneficial, especially if you don't have time to go join a group. So imagining yourself the last time that you did something that was very relaxing, maybe watching that sunset. One of my favorites is I'm a scuba diver. And so there's nothing more relaxing to me than being under the water and watching all of the beautiful nature, again, that God has given us. And the way that you do it yourself is you want to use all of your senses. So remembering, what did it feel like? Was it sunny? Was it cold? The touch on your skin? The taste, for me, the taste of the salty water, the coldness. What did I see? Was it sunny, cloudy the last time I was there? What did it feel like? And just using all of those senses and bringing myself back to that moment if I'm feeling a little bit stressed out. And I will also use this with my children. If my daughter is feeling a little bit stressed out, she's my older one who's a little bit easier to guide through things, and she's having a hard time falling asleep, favorite thing for us to do is to go meet somewhere in a dream. And so I'll start guiding her through it. Where do you want to go, sweetie? What's it look like? What are we doing? Are we having ice cream? Is it cold? Is it tasty? Imagine. Are we jumping on an airplane? Where are we going? And we'll just talk about it. And you'll see her body just relax as she envisions herself going to this place, to this dream, where she's going to meet mom later on tonight. And then there is the one moment meditation, because again, I have had the opportunity to practice a lot of this throughout my life through different experiences and blessings. But if you've never done this before, I recommend looking at this one moment meditation.
Since you're watching this video, I'll bet you want to meditate but don't have time. Maybe you've tried to meditate but had some trouble. Maybe you had a wonderful experience meditating over there, but just can't find that same feeling over here. Well, my name is Marty Borison, and in this video I'm going to introduce you to the technique of one-moment meditation. Then you can meditate whenever you need to. Like when you're feeling stressed, or feeling angry. Maybe you're having trouble sleeping, or you're feeling anxious, or you just need a new idea. Although one-moment meditation is ultimately about meditating in a moment, we're going to start with a minute. We start with a minute because a moment goes by so quickly that it's very hard to notice. But a minute is like a moment with handles on it. You know where it begins and where it ends, so it's easier to grasp. If you're ready, we'll do the basic minute now. You might want to shut the door, or at least tell people you're not available for the next minute. You don't have to tie yourself in knots for this. Just sit with your legs planted firmly on the floor. Try to sit up straight, but don't be rigid. It's as if your head were being lifted up away from the weight of the world. Think of it as cosmic traction. Now put your hands in any position that's balanced, symmetrical, and still. Like this, or like this. During the minute, simply focus on your breathing, moment by moment. Of course, even in the space of a minute, you will get distracted. That's perfectly normal. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. But as soon as you notice that you're distracted, just think, and bring your mind back to your breathing. I'll ring a bell so you know when to start and when to finish. Ready? Then close your eyes. Oh, one more thing. It's okay to smile. And go. As you open your eyes, notice how you feel right now. Maybe a little bit refreshed, a little bit more awake, a little bit more open-minded. Not bad for a minute. And the more you do it, the better it gets. But please don't ever do the basic minute for longer than a minute. Don't be macho about it. Because the point of the basic minute is to show you that you can make a meaningful change in your state of mind quickly. So if you do it for longer, you're cheating. With one-moment meditation, you can also learn how to do the portable minute, which is very useful when you're standing in line, on a train, or stuck in a boring meeting. You can also learn the bonus minute, the surprise minute, and the emergency minute. With one-moment meditation, you can also learn how to reduce the length of the basic minute step by step until it only takes a moment. And when you can meditate in a moment, your whole day can be filled with meditation, because it takes no time at all.
So I want to come into the next building block, which is religiosity and spirituality. So these things are associated with better mental health, lower rates of depression and anxiety, and other stress-related mental health problems, as well as even better physical well-being, and improves our quality of life, satisfaction, and our adjustment to change. And what this really encompasses is developing a good relationship with God, deepening our spirituality, and one where the relationship is dynamic and we are connected. And this is going to help us grow, especially after traumatic experiences. When trauma has shattered known assumptions, it is important to reconstruct and restore order, and placing our faith in God can help us accomplish this. And what is important is forming something known as a spiritual support for ourselves. And this support really derives from a deep connection to God, from a spiritual relationship in faith that is intimate, emotional, and cognitive. Finding meaning in life through our relationship with God. And especially if that relationship that we have with God is with a God of compassion and forgiveness and hope. This kind of relationship has been shown to improve resiliency and allow for something called post-traumatic growth. Having this hope that God can help us heal fuels our recovery, encourages us to dream again, to see what is possible. And of course, having this trust in God, that God will carry us. Similar to what we see in the poem or prayer, Footprints in the Sand. Giving to a higher power, accepting that what can't be changed is in the hands of God. That some events are beyond our comprehension and instead are part of God's larger plan, or possibly a test on our faith. And knowing that we have that strong relationship with God can give us the strength in those times to overcome those tests. And finally, following in God's ways of compassion, practicing compassion for ourselves and for others through forgiveness. Forgiveness for self, as well as forgiveness for others. So what is our image of God? So everybody on the table right now, I'm going to make you guys do a little bit of an art project. There are pencils and papers, and if you're at home, I invite you to go get a piece of paper and a pencil. And I want you to spend just a moment thinking about your relationship with God. And thinking about this relationship will help us maybe take those steps to deepening it. The Bible gives us a lot of images. It's what gives us the message in God's words. And so I have taken some words from the Bible and put them up here from Scripture. But I invite you to draw upon whatever you feel God is to you. And I encourage you to try to draw a picture. It can be stick pictures. It can be a symbol. There is no right, there is no wrong, there is no perfect, there is no erasing. There is no do-over. Just whatever your heart speaks to in terms of what you see with God. And I'm going to go ahead and give everybody just a few minutes to put that down on paper. Would anybody like to share what they have drawn so far? It doesn't have to be done, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Crystal. And as Crystal comes up, I will say, art is another way that you can really explore things through expression. And one of my favorite things to do is oil pastels, because they're messy. And so I introduce that to my children as well. And sometimes when my daughter might be flooded emotionally, I will say to her, draw your feelings for me. And it's a way to kind of get things out. So I love art for that reason. But Crystal, did you want to?
So I see God is swirling all around us. Anyone else? I can bring the microphone to you.
I'm not an artist, let me tell you. But I drew a heart because God is love to me. And these are supposed to be lightning bolts because God is all powerful. Sometimes to be feared in a good way.
Anyone else?
Thank you. So, as a mental health specialist and grief counseling, and I work with hospice, every single day I have to think of the light and that there's going to be another day. Every night that feels dark, I have the hope that the sun will rise. And that kept me moving in the midst of grief every day, but I always try to look for the sun in my life and flowers. And I look up at the sky a lot. So my sunshine is Jesus.
All right. Any last take? Oh, perfect.
I drew like a sun rising, and that's kind of the hope like of God and like kind of a new start and forgiveness. And then underneath is like the sun reflecting on us.
All right. Any last takers? Right. Well, thank you for all of those of you who shared. So, rituals can also strengthen our relationship with God. And of course, rituals can be found in our prayers and meditations that we've already spoken of before. And our prayer, especially, can be that direct line to strengthen our relationship with God. And of course, rituals are present through our participation in St. Charles. Some rituals are more obvious, such as participating in Mass with your community and hearing the Word of God through scriptures, singing our songs during Mass to connect, which is sometimes the only ritual that I fully engage in during Mass when my son is crawling all over me. But other rituals can be found in connections with the parishioners in our church. And this is where that social connection, that other building block that we saw at one of those initial slides, really comes into play. That social connection that we can really get from our faith community. That connection, the trust and support, knowing that we have people to check on us and to catch us. To see that we might not be smiling as brightly when we show up to Mass or show up to an event and ask us, hey, how are things going? And having the relationship to actually answer truthfully. This is critical to self-regulation and maintaining that healthy mind and body and spirit. Having that community that you can count on for support, for comfort, and for safety. So St. Charles, for me, is a place to be home. So I wanted to take a moment to kind of share a little bit of my faith experience in the past few years. Because St. Charles is where my family, especially in the middle of the pandemic, found a place to connect, to really grow our relationship with God and improve our own resilience. So I was blessed to have found St. Charles when I moved here about 10 years ago. And I participated in a variety of things, in small groups, social events, made connections with parishioners at Mass, and thought I had really found a great spiritual home. Both my children were born while I was a parishioner here. They were both baptized here, and I chose to baptize them at Mass because I felt very connected to the community and wanted to share that with them. My daughter had just started her faith formation journey, and things seemed good. And then the pandemic happened. And then we were isolated. We were quarantining. And it got kind of tough. It became difficult to grow and strengthen relationships, even that relationship with God that you think you could strengthen at home. The moment things started to open up, though, I was there. Mass on the lawn, I can do that because my kids were not used to coming to Mass. And I saw other families there getting into the same thing, bringing children back when they were not used to sitting still for an hour anymore. And then the faith formation program started to evolve during that second year of the pandemic and invited a fuller participation of families and created this really important community for myself and more so for my daughter because she was starting her journey for First Eucharist. And then during that year, they started for in-person classes, and I was super excited. My daughter's a people person. She needs people, and I was excited to have her around people at St. Charles again. And I valued this gift that was given to us and wanted to ensure that we continue to grow. That last year, I was moved by the Holy Spirit, and I became a catechist. I had never taught faith formation in my entire life. I am not a teacher. I'm not a pediatrician. But there I was because of how important I felt that this gift was to us. And I feel that becoming a catechist and participating in a family-focused faith formation was that final piece. I was really able to grow and strengthen and deepen my relationship with God by teaching the children and being with my daughter. And she was able to also form that community, run on the lawns with the other kids, make friends, have a buddy to sit with at church, and deepen her relationship with God as well as her relationship with her faith community, and strengthening that resiliency for ourselves and the rest of our family. And of course, as my son will say, everything trickles down to him, so I guess he benefited too. So I found my connection at St. Charles through faith formation. There you go. But it's not the only program that we have. So I thought about what else do we offer to form community, and where could someone else find a home? Faith formation was it for me because as a busy mom, it allowed me to still participate in something with my daughter. Not take time away from being a mom, but also find a space to deepen my connection with God. But St. Charles offers so many of these opportunities, so many of these groups, so many of the ways to really become part and to find that home again. And I may not have included everything up here, so if I missed something, I'm so sorry. But our bulletin is always full of invitations. And I invite everybody in this room and everybody at home to take a look at that bulletin and find something that invites you to come be part of the community, to make a friend, to make a connection. And these relationships, whether it's the movie night on the lawn or sitting in prayer, involves that socialization, being able to share in community and laughter and humor and in fun, as well as that meditative prayer and learning that helps us deepen our relationship with God. And the other space that can be really important is feeling empowered by helping others. And by leading some of these groups or being, organizing them can be another way as well to grow. So what about our children? So I want to take the last few minutes just to go through what else nourishes their resiliency. Sometimes it can actually be pretty simple. The presence of just one caring, sensitive, responsive adult in a child's life has been shown to be a major protective factor and can modulate the toxic stress responses. And this can be someone in the home or someone outside that they connect with through their faith community. And this positive and nurturing caregiving can reverse all of those effects that we talked about earlier. And there are protective factors for families that'll help build that. So by building this community capacity to support the adults that are caring for children, can foster that resilience and improve outcomes in any children that are exposed to traumas. So those protective factors include parent resiliency. So I hope that we spend a little bit of time on how to help ourselves as parents to do that for those of us who have children. Social connectedness, so creating that support for families. Making sure parents have knowledge of parenting and developing, having concrete support in times of need, and then making sure that we have societal and emotional competencies for children. So as we can see, supporting our own resiliency can be a very good way to help encourage that in our children. And then, of course, my favorite for kids is play. Something so simple as having time to play is so important. So next time you're with a child that you care for and love, I invite you to draw out their playfulness. Playfulness is so important. It actually gives them a chance to discover, to learn and heal. They help develop problem-solving skills, self-regulation, and form relationships. And all of this contributes to a child's ability to develop their own sense of resilience. So through play, they can nourish and strengthen relationships, even with caregivers, which is so important. So something simple, like Simon Says, helps children learn self-regulation. Building with Legos or blocks, now they've become a problem solver, and that'll help them in the future. Of course, yoga and stretching and some of those belly breathings. But reading books, dancing, singing, music, and then being there to talk through problems. So that is it. That is the end of my presentation. I hope that everyone has been able to take a little nugget today to take home with you, or realize that we all do carry some strengths and resiliencies already, and that all we have to do sometimes is to nourish those. And I'm happy to take any questions that we might have. Yeah, I mean, I see it in our elementary school as well. And I think if they're using a book, there's actually a book, I believe it's called something with monsters and emotions. Yeah. And so each kind of emotion, you get to do a craft or an art piece that represents it. And again, that, emotions are not necessarily good or bad. It's what we do with them. So, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be anxious. It just depends on what we do with those emotions. And so I think that's a great book. I wish I remembered the exact title, but it's something about emotions or monsters. Huh?
Color Monster?
I don't think it's Color Monster. I can look it up, but it's something about emotions and monsters. I think I would probably, in that situation, fall upon my faith, to be very honest with you. And each person may find they need something different, but in especially a difficult situation, and one where you may not have an answer or an explanation, really focusing on God and trusting in God, and that God has that plan. And when those emotions, again, if they have that fear, doing some of these exercises to bring them into a place of more peace. And a lot of that can be through prayer. So let's pray for the person who may be ill. Or if there's fear, it's okay to name the fear and then put your trust in God to help you through it. Yeah, and for children who can't write, drawing can be a really good way. Kids love art, and there's no right or wrong way to draw about things you're grateful for. I think in that case, it's difficult. We each have to kind of find our relationship with God. And I can even think back to a time, where I may not have been as connected with my relationship. And being fortunate to have found that. And so I think that the only thing we can do is, if we have that deep connection and that deep faith with God, is sharing that experience with them, but also realizing that spirituality can also be just as protective as religion can be, in that deep connection with God. And we can sometimes find a connection with those who may not have that relationship with God yet, or may not establish it, and encouraging just a sense of spirituality as well, and kind of talking about that. Especially in cases where they may put up walls, if we bring up religion, trying to open that or knock down those walls by starting the conversation around spirituality, greater beings, or things above us. And a lot of times I turn to nature, because I feel like I find God in nature all the time. But many people will find spirituality through there, and it can be a good opening door to that for people who don't have it in themselves yet.
Normelena, thank you so much. That was wonderful. Very well done.